Hey guys, how's it going? OSCO here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this Neuro bass in a 140 sort of style. Before I go any further, I'm just going to play the track, you guys can hear it, and then I'll get into how I made it. It's a pretty simple patch, and then the processing and the way that I've like mangled the sound is how I get like the tone, and then what I do is I'm throwing that into a sampler to get like different sort of rhythmic effects from it. Let's jump into the original patch. So how this is working is it's basically just a regular Reese bass that's being distorted in mono and then once in stereo. So I've got two patches of Harmor here. You can do this with any synth. It's just I chose to use Harmor because the unison engine in it is quite nice, but you can do it with anything as long as you can select multiple voices and make a simple Reese bass. So basically you're just taking a saw wave and you're creating two voices within that saw wave and detuning them ever so slightly. So if I go into this other synth there, you can see this is the unison section in Harmor. I've added two voices and I've panned them ever so slightly left and right. I've also added a little bit of chorus and a little bit of distortion within the synth. And then in this piece, I've just added a little bit of distortion on the mono version, and that's not got any unison on it. It's just a simple sine. That one, and then that's going out of a mono amp. Where the sound gets its character and stuff from. So basically, I've got one patch. So yeah, one patch is slightly more distorted than the other on the stereo one, and it sounds a bit louder. The patch below it is just in mono. Then what's sort of creating that sound? If I turn off all the processing afterwards, so that's just a saw wave on that one. Turn off the distortion on here. And once I add the distortion in on the first phases, sounds like that. Now what I've done is I've layered in a sub patch, which is just a sine, quite loud, and then you can mix in however much of that you want, and then it gives you a slightly different tone. So without it, sounds like this. And then once you add the sub in, what the sub's there for, I'll show you real quick now, is once all this processing is on it, with the sub out of it, with all the processing on, it's quite a harmonically rich sound, it's really loud and stuff, but once you add the sub, that's where like it sort of squares it out, and like the sines, the saw waves are trying to fight over the top, take priority over the sound, and like that's why you're seeing this nice like square wave with like all these weird artifacts that are being introduced. If I hit play and turn this off, you can see here like all these little tones that are like trying to squeeze through this really beefy square wave. Yeah. So basically, I'm going to go through each bit step by step, break down what I've done. So basically, the erosion is on here just to add a bit of high end. So without it, so you can see with the oscilloscope here, what that's doing, it's just adding a bit more crunch to the sound. So yeah, erosion is just a white noise generator essentially in this case, and it's I've used the wide variant because I want the noise to sound really wide. I want the sound to sound really tight in the bottom end, so kind of looking like this. So if your bass is down here, I want the bass to be mono, and then as it goes up higher, I want the high end to be sort of moving around your head. Basically, it's a really simple chain. There's a lot of processing going on, but what I'm actually doing is quite simple. I'm just creating some notches in different parts of the frequency spectrum, changing the resonance in some of them. Some of these further on, I'm changing the resonance, and basically just putting the LFO onto a random amount. I don't care about the rate; it doesn't matter. Just as long as you've got some movement going on. So if I turn these on one by one, you'll see the movement develop over time. So without it. So now you're hearing that there's dips in volume, and then as soon as you start hearing those dips in volume, then what you want to do is grab a glue compressor and just slam it. Take it, like, just really push it as hard as you can without it sounding horrific. Add this soft clip on the end. You can hear it really just gels it together, and that soft clipper, that's what's squaring out the wave. And then basically it's just a rinse and repeat job, but maybe change the resonance and where you've placed your notches just to get a bit more movement in there. And, you know, compress the taste. What I've done is I'll resample it. So I'll record 16 bars, which is what I've done here. So I've just got this long stretch of audio. If I turn all the processing off here, because this is just basically for the intro. And if I just turn off the reverb sound for a minute. What you can do as well to create a little bit more interest as well is go back into the synth whilst you're recording your 16 bars, maybe like play about with some of the synth parameters as well, maybe some of the distortion early on, and just get some different tones. Because you know, once you've got your sound and you're recording it out, you've got your initial patch already saved in that first few bars, and then you can go a bit crazy and experimental further on. Basically, once you've got your big stretch of audio, you want to throw that into a sampler. The key with throwing things into samplers and samplers to like keep it sounding loud is it'll default to like -12 with the volume to like 35% or something. And because it's a bass, you want to keep that high energy with every note. So you don't really want any velocity changes, and you want your volume to be as loud as it was when you recorded it, because all that compression and, you know, soft clipping will be to waste essentially. What I've done in this first patch, what I've done here to make that sound so like monstrous and stuff is I've basically added an EQ8 and going into like a plate reverb here, a little bit of dynamic EQ, and then I've banded out the reverb, and as that sound's playing, I'm like automating how much of that reverb is being allowed out. So as the sound starts off dark and gets brighter, the reverb gets darker and brighter as well. If I open up the automation that I've got going on here, I've got some notches moving on like the group. So throughout the entire track, I've got some extra movement going on top of the movement that I've already created earlier on. And it's basically just, you know, automate as much as you can to create more movement with these sorts of sounds. I've also added some automation on some more stereo width and stereo distortion. So without these sounds, and then with it, it just adds a bit more like bite and like aggression on the top end. I think it just sounds really nice. Yeah, I've just set it to a point within that audio sample that I liked, and I've got like a little looping feature on there as well. I don't think with this patch it doesn't get to it, but with this one, the looping feature is important because it's just a staccato note. And then this one, I've just left it on one shots and then played about with the note placement, so they're playing in triplets on this one here. And then with this one, how I've got that like pitch thing to sort of sound the way it does is by just basically putting an F, like a long note, and then putting another note overlapping it and like pitching it up like crazy. And if you go into the pitch oscillator part of your sampler, you can go into here, and down here it says glide, portamento. It'll be off originally. I just added some glide and put it up to like 300 milliseconds. And then along with that, I think I've added some automation in there with the EQ, just to give it some more. Oh no, that's sending it to the reverb send. Same thing again. So to create like that little bit of extra interest and stuff, like if this is a full track that I was working on, I'd probably go into more detail with the automation on different parameters like distortion and maybe more filters, synth parameters, maybe some more automation going on within the sampler itself, and get you know, giving some new flavors before the processing chains. And basically everything after this is just correctional EQ, just removing some muddy frequencies that are introduced the process before. And then I'm boosting some of the top end on some of these sounds because sometimes because I'm using the same patch and I'm, cutting away frequencies, adding frequencies, like the channel EQ just adds a nice bit of distortion and saturation on the top end when you're boosting it. You can get totally different results by playing around with different plugins. I've just done this mostly stock just to give you an example of what you can do with Ableton stock plugins. Like they're super, super capable. But as soon as you start introducing stuff like Guitar Rig and things like that from Native Instruments, like you can get some ridiculous, really unique, hyper aggressive, like noisier sort of sounds coming out of that. I think Black Sun Empire, like they basically like got their sound from playing about with Guitar Rig. So super cool plugin to like dive into and check out. Before I wrap up this video, guys, as well, I just want to say that I've made a Discord server, so I'm going to leave a link to that in the description below. Join there. It's just a place for us to like chat and have a bit of a dialogue. I'm going to be doing some like preset giveaways and things on there just whilst I'm playing about with stuff. Maybe post some of my racks on there as well. Yeah, there's a place for you guys to like throw your stuff in and just talk about sound design. Like like-minded people can get together and just maybe work on collaborations and stuff like that. It'd be really cool. As per usual, all my links will be in the description below, like my Patreon and Facebook and Soundcloud and stuff like that. So go check those out, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.